Welcome, everyone, ready to dive into Atomic Habits. We're going deep today, exploring the book and the audiobook by James Clear, figuring out how the tiniest changes can, well, it's like atoms building into something much bigger. And speaking of big, have you heard the story of how James Clear got into all this habit
Oh,
stuff?
it's a wild one.
Lay it on us.
Picture this. High school sophomore, baseball field, last day of school, and bam, hit in the face with a baseball bat. That's James Clear's story.
Oh, man, that's scary. What happened?
Serious stuff. Skull fractures, eye socket shattered, the works. And he was knocked out cold, couldn't remember simple things, even ended up in a coma. Recovery, long and tough. Really makes you think, one event changes everything.
It does. And it sounds like this was a turning point for him. Did he ever play baseball again?
He did.
Hmm.
But, well, imagine going from, dreaming of the pros to getting cut from varsity after an injury like that. Ended up on JV, which, forced him to rethink things.
I bet. So how did he bounce back?
Here's where it gets interesting. College, instead of getting down, he focused on what he could control.
Yeah.
Daily habits. Small stuff like sleep, keeping his dorm tidy, studying regularly. Started seeing those as like building blocks, confidence grew.
So he built what a foundation, one habit at a time.
Exactly. And get this, the ripples started. Weightlifting grades skyrocketed, even went from the bottom of the baseball roster to team captain.
From a coma to a star athlete. Wow, he really embraced this idea of small steps to big results, huh?
He did, and that's the foundation of Atomic Habits. Big achievements, they're not overnight miracles, they're consistency day after day. So forget huge changes all at once. It's about building a system, tiny habits, those 1% improvements. Over time, that's transformation.
Okay, so I'm getting it. But what are atomic habits? Just good habits or, well, what's different?
It's deeper than just good. Think tiny changes, those little gains, compounding over time. Like the British cycling team, their coach, Dave Brailsford, was all about 1% improvements. They tweaked everything, bike seats, even how they washed their hands. Obsessive, but it worked. Olympics, Tour de France, they dominated.
Wow, so even those details matter.
Big time. But here's the flip side. Compounding works negatively too. Small errors, bad choices, repeated, they become big problems. Like debt, a little's fine, but keep adding, it gets out of control. Same with habits.
Yikes, that's a thought. Every choice matters.
Yeah.
So how do we even start building a system of these good atomic habits?
That's where goals versus systems comes in. James Clear says, focus on the system, not the goal. Goals are the results, but the system, they're the process.
Okay, give me an example. Make it real.
Say you want to be a writer, right? Big goal, publish a bestseller. But the system is writing every day, learning the craft, feedback, networking, all those things.
So it's the daily work, the consistency more than the end goal.
You got it. It's like building a house, right? You don't just wish it up. Foundation, walls, roof, step by step. Same with habits. You need a system that makes success, well, almost inevitable.
Okay, I'm with you. It's like shifting the mindset from reaching a goal to embracing the journey. Is that goalless thinking?
Boom, you got it.
Yeah.
Might sound weird, but it's long-term vision. Not ditching goals, but knowing true success is continuous growth. Always evolving, not a single win.
Okay, that is powerful. It takes the pressure off. But how do we do it? Build good habits, break the bad. How?
That's where James Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come in. It's a framework for, well, understanding habits, how to change. And it all starts with awareness. Make it obvious.
So we got to know what we're doing, good and bad, right? That's where the habit scorecard comes in.
Exactly. Clear says write it down, all your regular stuff, good, bad, neutral. It's like scoring your habits. Helps you see what you're doing on autopilot all day.
Okay, makes sense, like taking stock. But once you know what to change, how do you, actually make it happen?
That's where the other 3 laws come in. We'll get there. But first, implementation intentions. Powerful stuff.
Okay, implementation intentions sounds fancy. What's that?
It's simple, actually. You plan when and where you'll do the new habit. Not all exercise more, but 7 a.m., 30-minute run, the park. Specifics. That's the trigger. No more vagueness makes it easier to follow through.
So no more excuses. I like it.
Right. And it leads to habit stacking. You pair a new habit with one you already do. Like you make your bed every morning, solid habit, stack a new one. After bed, I meditate 1 minute.
That's smart. Using your routine to, make it natural.
Just embedding it, making it automatic. And when you link them up, it's a chain reaction. Powerful stuff.
This is great. I'm already thinking about my own routines.
That's the point. Understanding how our brains work, finding the hacks that make change easier.
So this brings us to the second law, right? Make it attractive. What does that even mean?
That's all about reward. We do what feels good. So make those good habits tempting. James Clear has this thing called temptation bundling.
Okay, temptation bundling. Tell me everything.
You link something you want to do with something you need to do. Say, love Netflix, gotta exercise, only watch your show while on the treadmill.
You're tricking your brain into wanting exercise? That's genius.
You got it. That's the power. It's positive association with something, well, maybe not so fun on its own.
Yeah.
The reward, that's the motivator.
This is like a motivation toolbox. I love it.
It is. And speaking of tools, your environment matters big time. James Clear talks about how it's full of cues that trigger stuff we don't even realize it.
Okay, so how do we hack our environment for good habits?
It's simple. Walk into your kitchen, see cookies, you'll probably eat one, right? Visuals are powerful. So to make good habits easier, hide the bad stuff.
Out of sight, out of mind. So make the bad invisible, make the good obvious.
Exactly. Want to eat healthy? No junk food in sight? Want to read more? Book on your nightstand, first thing you see? It's setting yourself up to win.
This is eye-opening. I never thought about how much my environment affects me.
It's huge. Pay attention to those cues and design your space to work for you.
So many ideas already. So we talked about making habits obvious, attractive, but how do we make them stick? We've all started with good intentions, then, well, life happens.
That's where the third law comes in. Make it easy. James Clear's 2-minute rule is gold here.
2-minute rule. Okay, what's that one again?
Easy peasy. Starting a new habit. It takes 2 minutes, max. Not, I'll write a novel, but I'll write for 2 minutes. Ridiculously easy to start, so you can't say no.
I like that. It takes the pressure off.
And here's the trick. Once you start, you'll probably keep going.
That's so true. Sometimes just starting is the hardest part. But what about when those 2 minutes aren't enough? How do we, build up?
That's where habit shaping comes in. You slowly increase the difficulty or time once you've got that 2-minute version down. Want to meditate 20 minutes a day? Don't jump in, start with 2, add a minute each week.
So it's about baby steps, making it sustainable, not overwhelming.
Exactly. Make it enjoyable, achievable. And mastering those first 2 minutes, it reinforces showing up. That's key, long term.
This is so helpful, so much less pressure. Okay, we've got obvious, attractive, and easy. What's the last piece?
The fourth law, make it satisfying. It's all about reward. We do what feels good. We repeat what feels good.
Makes sense. But how do we make those good habits, the ones with long-term rewards, feel good now?
Our brains are wired for instant gratification. That's the problem. Bad habits, they often feel good right away, even if they're bad in the long run.
It's like eating cake feels amazing, then you feel sluggish later. How do we, fight that urge?
James Clear says find ways to make those good habits pleasurable now. Small rewards. Worked out, have a smoothie, listen to your favorite music, create that positive link.
Make it feel good to be good. I like it. And as you keep doing it, those longer-term rewards, feeling healthy, productive, those kick in, right?
Exactly. You're rewiring your brain. Positive feedback loop. It's powerful for motivation.
This is awesome. It's like we're learning how to hack our own brains.
That's what James Clear does. Combine science with strategy.
I'm totally rethinking my habits already.
Good. It's all about those tiny changes, those atomic habits that, over time, add up to something incredible. Small steps, day after day. Trust the process.
This is blowing my mind. Tiny changes, big results. It's amazing. And James Clear, he doesn't just stop at behavior, right? He talks about how habits affect our identity, don't they?
You got it. It's not just doing differently, but being different.
Okay, so how does that even work? Habits shaping who we are.
It's a loop, like a feedback loop. Your habits shape your identity, and then your identity shapes your habits right back. Every time you do a habit, it's a vote for the kind of person you want to be.
Makes sense. So if I work out regularly, I'm not just getting fit, I'm saying I'm a healthy person.
Exactly. It's like, this is who I am now. And the more you are that, the more you want to keep those habits going.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, but the good kind. So how do we pick habits that match the person we want to be?
James Clear talks about your talent stack. It's your unique mix of skills, interests, what makes you, well, you.
Yeah.
You gotta see what comes naturally, what you enjoy, what you're good at. Like Steve Martin, the comedian, he was always drawn to making people laugh, even performing to empty rooms early on, right?
Yeah.
But that dedication, it came from wanting to be a comedian.
So it's finding where your passion and your skills meet, and then building habits that support that, like starting the game with a power-up.
You got it. Using your strengths to, well, create a path that feels right for you. But there's another piece here. When you're building habits, got to find the right level of difficulty. James Clear calls it the Goldilocks rule.
The Goldilocks rule. Okay, that sounds interesting. So not too hard, not too easy, just right.
Exactly. Think about it. Too easy, you bored. Too hard, you quit. But challenging enough to be engaging, not overwhelming, that's the sweet spot. That's where you get into flow, totally in the zone.
That's so true. I see it in my hobbies. Too easy, I lose interest. Too hard, I get frustrated. So how do we find that just right level?
Listen to yourself. Feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, dial back. Feeling bored, unchallenged. Level up. It's all about that balance, challenge, and enjoyment.
I like that. It's intuitive. And it reminds me of something else James Clear talks about, reflection and review.
Super important, and people forget it. It's about taking a step back, seeing what's working, what's not. Feedback for your habits, making sure they're serving you.
So checking in with yourself, making tweaks. And that's not just for single habits, but for our whole system, right?
Absolutely. Here's a sports example. Pat Riley coached the Lakers. He had this career best effort program, CBE. It tracked all these things, not just points, but effort, hustle, the little things that win games.
So it wasn't the score, it was the actions that lead to the score.
Exactly. Riley knew that even the best players need a system for getting better. The CDE, it measured that progress, those 1% gains, and, those add up.
That's inspiring. Even the best are still improving. It's that growth mindset, believing you can always get better. And it makes me think about finding your strengths, like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Find what you're drawn to, what feels good when you do it well. Then build habits around that.
So you're playing to your strengths, finding a path that feels right, fulfilling. But how much of that is like in our genes? Are we kind of wired for some things? How much control do we really have over our habits?
The classic nature versus nurture question, right? Genes definitely play a part. Some folks are naturally outgoing, some are more introverted, some are analytical, others are creative.
So genes are like a starting point, a blueprint. But are we stuck with it?
Not at all. Genes aren't destiny. They're a starting point. But our environment, experiences, and choices, they all shape who we are, what habits we form.
So it's both nature and nurture working together, our tendencies and what we experience. And with habits, it's finding that balance, working with our nature, but still challenging ourselves to grow.
Exactly. Say you're naturally introverted. Building habits that need lots of social stuff, like networking, public speaking, it might be tougher. Doesn't mean you can't, but you got to find ways to tailor it.
So instead of huge networking events, maybe it's building deeper one-on-one connections. Or instead of a big presentation, start by sharing ideas with a small group.
Right. Find a version of the habit that feels good, authentic. Work with your strengths, not against them.
This is so freeing. It's like you can be you, but still grow and improve.
Exactly. Your own path to success, one that fits you. And speaking of making habits stick, let's revisit that idea of making them satisfying.
Yes. The fourth law, we talked about it. But I want to go deeper. How do we make even the hard habits feel rewarding?
Our brains, they're wired for pleasure, avoiding pain. So if a habit feels bad, we won't stick to it.
Like anything you force yourself to do, it feels like a chore, you resist it. So how do we make the good stuff feel good?
Focus on the immediate rewards, even small ones. Trying to exercise. Reward yourself, a healthy smoothie. Listen to music you love while you work out.
So making the experience enjoyable in the moment.
Exactly. You link pleasure to the habit, you're more likely to repeat it. And over time, the natural rewards, feeling healthier, more energy, that kicks in too.
It's like a positive loop. The habit itself becomes the reward. And we talked about tracking habits. That helps too, right?
Big time. Seeing your progress, it feels good, it reinforces the behavior, like a little dopamine hit, checking off those boxes.
Gamifying your habits. I love it.
Right. But it's not just external rewards, it's about cultivating that inner satisfaction too.
Yeah.
The feeling of, well, pride, accomplishment.
So it's finding that internal drive, that purpose. That's what keeps you going when it's tough.
Exactly. Connecting your habits to your values, goals, the person you want to be, that strong why, that's your motivation.
So powerful. Those tiny habits, they're a reflection of like our deeper selves.
And speaking of making them stick, let's remember the 2-minute rule.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. How did that go again?
Easy. New habit. 2 minutes. Max.
Yeah.
Make it so easy to start, you can't say no.
Like the saying, well begun is half done, right? Starting is the hardest part sometimes.
Exactly. Get over that hurdle and you'll probably keep going.
But what about when 2 minutes isn't enough anymore? How do we like level up?
That's habit shaping. Once you got those 2 minutes down, slowly increase the difficulty, the time. Want to read 30 minutes a day, don't start there. 2 minutes, then 5, then 10.
So it's incremental, sustainable, not overwhelming.
Precisely. And even those tiny improvements, they matter. That's the power of compounding. Like money with high interest, those habits, they grow exponentially if you're consistent.
Great analogy. Consistency is key. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it.
You got it. The more consistent, the more those small things build and build. It's real change.
Wow, it's a lot to think about. I'm starting to understand how tiny changes really can transform your life. But I'm curious about James Clear, his journey. How did he go from like college athlete to this habit expert?
So after college, he started a business
Hmm.
and he began writing about his personal habit experiments on his website. New article every week. That was his thing. Built consistency in his writing, grew his audience.
So he was like living it before he was teaching it.
Exactly. And as his audience grew, more opportunities came. Conferences, consulting, and then boom, a book deal with Penguin Random House.
Atomic Habits, the book, it's everywhere now. It's incredible how those small habits, they led to this huge success.
It shows how powerful his ideas are, how much they've helped people, and it's that ripple effect, right? Small changes lead to things you never expected.
So inspiring. Ties back to what we were saying, finding your passion, your talent stack, and building habits from there. James Clear, he's like a walking example of that.
He is. And it reminds us we can all achieve amazing things if we put in the work. Build those atomic habits that support our goals.
Speaking of achieving, let's talk more about the Goldilocks rule. Finding that sweet spot where our habit's challenging, but not, too much.
It's about that balance, challenge, and enjoyment. Too easy, you get bored. Too hard, you quit. But just right keeps you coming back.
How do you even know if a habit's just right for you?
Tune into yourself, feeling excited, engaged, you're golden, overwhelmed, frustrated, back off a little, bored, unchallenged, step it up. It's all about flow, that state where you're totally absorbed.
I get that, totally. When I'm in flow, I lose track of time.
That's it. That's where the magic happens. The most progress, the most fulfillment. And it's not just for habits, it's for life too.
So true.
I
Finding those things that light you up, challenge you in the right way. Finding your passion.
Well said. And that brings us back to identity, something James Clear talks about a lot, how our habits shape who we are.
Yes. That was fascinating. Remind me how that works again.
It's like casting votes, James Clear says. Each habit you do is a vote for the kind of person you want to be.
So I write every day. I'm not just getting better, I'm becoming a writer.
You got it. Reinforcing that identity. And the more you reinforce it, the more real it becomes.
Like you create it by doing it. But how do we choose the right identity? How do we know who we want to become?
That's a big question. It starts with knowing yourself. What are your values, your passions? What do you want to give back to the world? Get clear on that, and then you can pick habits that match that vision.
So matching actions to values, making sure your habits are taking you where you want to go.
Exactly. And that's what makes James Clear's work so good. It's not just behavior change, it's self-perception. Seeing yourself as capable of, well, anything, really.
Absolutely. And one of the things that stops us, I think, is fear.
Oh, fear is powerful, holds us back for sure. Keeps us in our comfort zones.
So how do we, beat that fear? Step outside our comfort zones and try those challenging habits.
Start small. Remember the 2-minute rule. We don't need to go from zero to hero overnight.
So baby steps. Get used to being uncomfortable a little at a time.
Exactly. And as you get more confident, you can take on bigger challenges.
It's like building up courage muscles.
Love that. And another thing, reframe your thinking. Don't focus on what could go wrong. Think about what could go right.
From fear to possibility, I like it.
That's it. And remember, failure is part of the journey. It's not the enemy, it's a chance to learn.
This is empowering. We can do so much more than we think. And it all comes back to systems, right?
You know it. James Clear says systems take the pressure off willpower. They make it easier to stick with your habits, even when you don't want to.
Okay, give me an example. A system that helps build a habit.
Sure, let's say you want to meditate every morning. Your system. Lay out your cushion the night before, set a phone reminder, pick the time and the spot.
So take the thinking out of it. No more decisions to make, no more excuses.
Exactly. The more you automate, the less willpower you need.
Okay, I'm seeing it now. It's a structure, guides you even when you're tired, not feeling it.
And it's not just for habits, it's for your whole life. Systems for your money, your health, relationships, work. They keep you on track, moving towards your goals, even when things are tough.
So it's like a framework for a good life, a plan for success, and fulfillment.
That's it. Structure, accountability, support. staying focused on what matters.
This is great stuff. We don't have to figure it all out alone. We can build these systems that help us live better, more intentionally.
And that's what atomic habits are all about, using small changes to create a remarkable life.
So well said. And talking about remarkable lives, one thing that struck me about James Clear, he's so positive about human potential. He really believes in what we're capable of.
He does. He says our potential is limitless. We're not defined by our past, our mistakes.
It's that growth mindset again, always learning, always improving.
Exactly. Believing you can always be better no matter where you are right now.
And it's about doing something, taking action, building those habits that make a better future.
Yes, action is key. It's how you make things happen. It's how you bridge the gap between what's possible and what's real. And one thing that makes James Clear's work so useful is that he gives us the tools, the practical strategies. He doesn't just talk about habits. He shows us how to actually change them.
Right. It's actionable advice, real-world examples. It makes it feel, well, doable. What are some of those strategies?
We've talked about a bunch already. The 2-minute rule, habit shaping, temptation bundling, designing your environment. These are all ways to make good habits easier, bad habits harder.
And they're simple. Anyone can use them.
Exactly. That's what makes them so powerful. They give you control. You create the life you want.
And speaking of creating the life you want, it's amazing how much James Clear emphasizes the power of small changes. Those tiny things, they add up over time.
He gets it. It's the long game. Lasting change. It's not about some overnight makeover. It's those small, consistent things. They compound over time.
It's about trusting the process, believing those small steps matter.
And they do. I've seen it in my life, in others' lives. Those small, consistent actions, those are the things that transform us.
Such an empowering message. We all have the power to create a better future, one step at a time.
And that's the beauty of it, atomic habits. They're a roadmap to a life that's successful and fulfilling.
Perfectly said. And speaking of fulfillment, one of the most valuable things about James Clear's work, he really emphasizes finding your purpose.
Ah, yes. Making your habits work for your values, your goals.
Why is that so important?
Because when you do that, when your habits and your purpose are aligned, it gives you direction, it motivates you, makes it way easier to stay on track, to make progress.
So it's having that why, that reason behind everything you do.
Exactly. Knowing why you're doing something makes it easier to keep going, even when it's tough.
It all makes sense now. It's about connecting your habits to something bigger, something meaningful.
And that brings meaning to your life, too.
So well said. And you know, one thing that I find really inspiring about James Clear, he's so positive about human potential. He really believes we can achieve great things.
Oh, he's a big believer in what we're capable of. He reminds us that our past, it doesn't have to define us. We can learn, we can grow.
That growth mindset again, always getting better.
Exactly. Believing in yourself that you can always improve.
And it's about taking action, putting in the work, building those habits that'll help us reach our full potential.
Yes. Action is everything. It takes possibility and turns it into reality. And one of the things that makes James Clear so helpful is he gives us the tools, the strategies to make it happen. He doesn't just talk about it, he gives us a plan.
Right. He makes it practical. What are some of those strategies again?
We've covered a lot of them. The 2-minute rule, habit shaping, temptation bundling, and environment design. These are all things you can use right now to build good habits, break the bad ones.
And they work. I've seen it myself.
Me too. Simple, but effective.
And anyone can use them. You don't need special skills or anything.
Exactly. They're powerful because they give you control. You create the life you want.
And, you know, speaking of creating the life we want, James Clear really believes in the power of small changes. It's inspiring how those tiny things can really add up.
He's all about the long game. He knows lasting change. It's not a quick fix. It's about those small, consistent improvements. They build and build over time.
Trusting the process, believing those little things matter.
They do. I've seen it myself and so many others. Those small, consistent things, they transform you.
Such a powerful message. We can all create a better future one step at a time.
That's what's so great about atomic habits. They show you the way to a life that's both successful and fulfilling.
So well said. And talking about fulfillment, I really value how James Clear emphasizes finding your purpose.
Ah, yes. Making sure your habits are working for you, aligned with your values and goals.
Why is that so crucial?
Because when you do that, it gives you direction and motivates you, makes it so much easier to stay on track to keep moving forward.
So it's all about that why. behind what you do.
Exactly. Knowing why makes it easier to keep going even when it's not easy.
Makes perfect sense. It's connecting your habits to something bigger than yourself.
And that gives your life meaning and purpose.
Beautifully said. And speaking of meaning and purpose, one of the most inspiring things about James Clear, he truly believes in human potential.
He does. We can achieve amazing things, that's his message.
It's a powerful message. How does he help us tap into that potential?
He reminds us that we're not limited by our past. We can learn, we can always grow.
The growth mindset.
Exactly. Believing we can always be better.
And taking action, doing the work, building the habits that lead to that better version of ourselves.
Yes, action is everything. It's the bridge between what's possible and what's real.
And I appreciate that James Clear doesn't just talk about this stuff. He gives us the tools, the strategies.
He makes it practical. He gives us a plan.
Can you give us a few examples of those strategies?
Absolutely.
Right.
We've already talked about several of them. The 2-minute rule, habit shaping, temptation bundling, and environment design. You can start using those right now to build better habits.
And they work. I've seen it in my own life.
Me too. They're simple, but they get the job done.
And anyone can use them. You don't need any special skills or knowledge.
That's the beauty of them.
Yeah.
They're empowering. You take control, you create the life you want.
Well said. And you know, it all comes back to what James Clear talks about so much, the power of small changes. Those tiny actions, they make a big difference over time.
He's all about the long game. He understands that real change, it doesn't happen overnight. It's about consistency, those small improvements that build on each other.
It's about trusting the process, believing that those little things really matter.
And they do. I've seen it happen time and again, those consistent small actions. They transform us.
Such a powerful message. We all have the power to create a better future for ourselves just by taking it one step at a time.
That's the power of atomic habits. They give you a roadmap to a life that is successful and fulfilling.
Well said. And speaking of fulfillment, one of the things that stands out in James Clear's work is how much he emphasizes finding your purpose.
Yes, aligning your habits with your values and goals. That's so important.
Why is that so crucial?
Because when you do that, when your habits are in sync with your purpose, it gives you a sense of direction. It motivates you. It makes it easier to stay on track and make progress.
So it's like having a why behind everything you do.
Exactly. When you know why you're doing something, it's so much easier to stick with it, even when it's tough. It's about finding that connection, knowing why you do what you do. It makes those habits, well, they become part of who you are, not just things you got to do.
It's not willpower anymore. It's like living your values.
Exactly. And speaking of inspiring change, one of the things that really hit home for me from James Clear's work, it's how he talks about the power of small changes.
He's so good at making these big ideas, well, understandable, relatable.
He is. He's all about those 1% improvements, the ones that might seem small at first, but over time, they make a huge difference. It's not about those massive overnight changes.
It's like that story he tells about the British cycling team making all those tiny tweaks to their training. It led to, they were amazing.
That's compounding in action. Small changes, consistent over time, extraordinary results.
We really underestimate those little daily actions, don't we?
We do. And that's where those 4 laws of behavior change come in. They give us a framework, a way to make those small changes stick.
It's like a recipe for good habits. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Powerful stuff, those 4 laws.
Yeah.
Especially when you use them all together. Understand the psychology and you set yourself up for success.
And it's not just about, checking things off a list. It's about becoming a better person.
Exactly. It's about growth, about living a life that, reflects who you want to be.
James Clear, he combines the science and the strategies. He's like a coach for habit change.
He is. And one of the most important things to remember, change is possible. Wherever you are, whatever you want to achieve, you have the power to make it happen.
That's encouraging to hear. But where do we even begin? What's the first step to creating positive change?
It always starts with those small steps, those atomic habits. Focus on the 1% improvements, the ones that might not seem like much now, but trust me, they'll compound over time.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress.
Exactly. Just take action. Even a small step is a step forward. Be patient. Change takes time.
And for our listeners who are, really intrigued by all of this and want to learn more about James Clear and his work, what do you recommend?
His book, Atomic Habits, of course.
Yeah.
So much great stuff in there. And his website, jamesclear.com. It's a goldmine of information on habits, decision-making, all of that.
Awesome. And I'd like to leave our listeners with this. What's one tiny habit, one atomic habit you can start today? Something small, maybe meditating for a minute, reading for 5 minutes, making your bed.
And remember, make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
The 4 laws, that's the key.
Hmm.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into atomic habits. It's been a journey. I hope you found it insightful and, well, inspiring.
It's been a pleasure sharing these ideas with you and with everyone listening.
And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building those atomic habits. They're the foundation of a remarkable life.